Fly on the Wall is back. This is a series where I watch the highlight reel of a Zoom pool on PokerStars. And what better way to spend your morning, afternoon, or evening than watching me sweat the 500 Zoom pool. This doesn't run very often, but it's chock full of strong players, GTO lines, fancy sizings. This is going to be a world of fun. Let's get into it. What's up, guys? 500 Zoom is running on PokerStars, so I figured we would do Fly on the Wall here. If you didn't see this series the first time, the idea is that I watch this highlight reel that PokerStars lobby actually offers you if you click the observe button. On Stars, you can watch this. So we have a very big 4-bet here deep. This is super interesting. Cruiser is a player I've played with a fair bit and is definitely very solid. I don't know who sat 1337 EN is. So the standard of play is going to be a lot higher, I would think, in this game than the 100 NL edition we did last time. King 9, Deuce, Rainbow, extremely good board for the 4-betters range. Going to be a lot of c-betting here. I'd imagine that this quarter pot bet is just standard and with range. Definitely a good way to play this spot, just simplifies things. There's no hand that you can't bet for that sizing. Now you're going to want to start splitting your range though. I would play at this SPR something like third pot to half pot again here is probably good. Check is obviously fine too. You want to slow play some of your big hands on this node. You want to be checking your queens and jacks and stuff like that. If you can 4-bet jacks to 35 BBs pre, I guess you probably can in this sort of late position spot. But I have to say I'm not totally versed here. So check back from the big blind. This is going to be a very sort of tens, jacks, heavy range, I would think. There's going to be some king X in there as well as some club draws and some hands like ace queen, ace jack of hearts, ace 10 of spades, etc. Stuff like this. So still some air in the big blind's range. Needless to say, the small blind is going to want to bluff at some frequency here with air, but they probably can't just go ahead and bluff any time that they want. This is not a favourable world for the small blind when the backdoor flush draw completes. So it's going to be slightly in favour of big blind, I think. But more than anything, the action sequence here is just going to favour the big blind's range because the big blind has filtered by calling a bet. And all in now for 2x pot. This is super interesting and hyper polarizing, of course. This is really weird. I guess the bluffs with the sizing in theory are probably things like ace queen offsuit with a club. Something like that, especially the ace of clubs, because some of the slow plays from small blind are going to be the club hands. But yeah, this is super interesting. And Cruz is actually having a think here, does eventually fold. I think queens and jacks are not the blockers you want to call within that spot. That sort of 2x pot jam is something you're just not going to see at lower stakes. It's a real headache when you start moving up. And encounter players that can actually affect these plays puts you in a world of unfamiliarity and pain, and it's a whole new puzzle to try and figure out. So definitely doing some solver work on spots that you're less likely to see at the lower stake, but more likely to see when you move up is a great thing to do in preparation for stepping up in stakes. Dino Supremo, I believe this is a Scottish poker player, definitely a good reg. From back in the day, I remember this guy from a while ago. I've played a little bit with Dino Supremo, seems really solid. Don't think I know who the iPoker is, so check here in a 3-bet pot, over to the 3-better. Yep, you can do lots of different things on this board. You can have some big bets, you can have some smaller bets. If you're going for a sizing like this, it's definitely likely that you're moving towards betting range. That means that even some of those 10x bluffs, like the Jack 10 offsuit, 10 9 offsuit, 10 5 suited, could even get into the c-bet strategy here if you're just doing it with everything. Big blind does have to be a bit wary on a node like this because they do have that more polarized range that contains more trash. It does mean that when they do have pocket pairs and things, they're going to have to defend at higher frequency because the overall composition of their range is that much more frail. Ace of hearts on the turn. This is a card that does okay for small blind, but it's definitely more big blind's card than small blind, so that's because small blind, the check raiser, is going to have whiffed here really hard with all of the straight draw, gutter, 4-5, queen jack, king queen type stuff that would constitute some bluff raises, but nevertheless, small blind does still have a plethora of ace queen, ace jack, hands like this that raised flop, and these may continue value betting. Call again from big blind. This strikes me as a call only spot. I think there'd be very little, if any, jam here showing up in a GTO strategy. And yeah, like super theoretical, this sort of analysis at 500 Zoom. Definitely a tough game. There's probably a few soft spots here, otherwise I doubt it would be running. So there's probably a few weaker players in the pool. I don't know if this guy here, iPoker, is one of them. Deuce is full against ace queen. Complete cooler for Dino Supremo, beating some value bets there like ace jack, chopping with ace queen. Phenomenal blocker to the value range, blocking bolts and trips. Easy call. The deuces seems a little bit light, blind versus blind, but nothing disastrous there. Yeah, pretty normal to just check raise flop and bomb off here. Just an all-in pre-flop queens against ace king here as we conclude the last hand's analysis. Cruiser against Raj. We'll try and get an idea of like who the regs are and who the recreational players are in the pool as we go through this. And this one is going to go the way of Raj. Okay, open here from under the gun. Warum? Brum? Is that right? Did I pronounce it okay? Broom. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with broom. Goes ahead and makes it 2.25 big blinds under the gun here. I've got this guy tagged yellow. Yellow is like the color I used to use for regs, like back in the day before I started making them all orange. So that's all we're really seeing here. It's not the disrespect color. I do have a color for regs that I think are not so good, but that's the kind of sludgy color when they get demoted for doing something silly. So these guys are probably just people I played with a while ago. I don't play a lot on stars these days, so I've not encountered either of these two for a while. 3-bet pot here, going to go ahead and use this sizing. This is fine. Most people would go smaller, but 40% pot here, whatever this is okay as well. A lot of people would use B25 or B33. Check, and you want to pull out here again in the button shoes. You want to bluff a bunch of your Broadways at a really high frequency. You want to bluff some of your pocket 8s with a club and stuff like that as well, I would imagine, as they're getting folds from things like 9s and jacks and queens and stuff like that at some frequency. And then the check back and 10 of clubs river here. This is going to be a mandatory bluff spot for the under the gun player because a ton of the stuff they called the flop with has now got there. This is a river card that connects with the range under the gun, continued with against the c-bet. So if we do have like queen jack here, we're going to be in a mandatory game theory bluffing situation. Block is an okay line. This is something you would do with jacks or something like that. Just trying to get value from like the pocket 9s, pocket 8s, or ace high of your opponent's range. Small raise makes a lot of sense with something like 10x. Maybe some bad flush as well can go ahead, like 4 or 5 of clubs can go ahead and use this sizing here. I'd think there's probably a bigger sizing in range here. So yeah, the Jack 10 is a very normal hand to show up with there. I don't think we can actually see the showdown. No, it's not going to show us because we're not in the game. We don't have that privilege to see what the under the gun player showed up with here. Okay, back to Dino Supremo here, under the gun, going for the min open. If you like the way we talk and think about the game, guys, don't forget to check out the Carrot Poker School on carrotcorner.com. It's where I put all of my theoretical knowledge, and it's where you can get an insight into my brain as it comes to poker theory. I tried to make that as comprehensive a course as possible. Okay, so here we have a c-bet 3-way. This is the sort of board where heads up I'd use a sizing like overbet or pot or b75, but heads up I think dropping this to half pot, but 3-way, sorry, I think dropping this to half pot makes a lot of sense. The call from small blind, definitely a board that's reasonable for small blind's range. The 7-8 is going to be in tow here sometimes, like 7-8 suited. There's going to be some stuff like set slow playing against half pot at some frequency. I believe it becomes okay, especially with like 9s to go ahead and slow play there. A big lead on the turn, pretty interesting node. Billing calls. This is a strange situation to just go ahead and flat out lead the turn here after calling flop. But yeah, I mean, it does make some sense. You picked up some newly nutted hands, you had some slow plays, you had some 7-8. I'd imagine this is really strong in practice actually. There'll be a bit of like 4-5 in it, sure, but and then the all-in makes a ton of sense. A bit of turd throwing, at least there was the courtesy to wipe it up with the toilet roll. That's always nice. And Dino's in a pretty tough spot here because it's not immediately obvious what the bluff should actually be in this situation. There's been range filtering on the flop. Queen Jack could be in small blind's range, I guess, at a low frequency. I'd imagine that's a bit of a indifferent hand on the flop between raising, folding, and calling. But yeah, really tough spot for in position there. Finding the bluff catchers against that sizing is anything but easy. Usually best just to throw some shit and some toilet roll in those cases instead of trying to come up with a calling range, in my experience. At least it's more satisfying. A 3-bet pot. Looks like a weaker player stack size here for Danois 5. Danois. I'm going to go with Danois because it makes me sound more sophisticated. Need a glass of red wine as I say that. It's a bit early for that though. It's 11:53 a.m. C-bet and a call here in this 3-bet pot. Flush turns, I'd be using things like third pot. This is a bit big for my tastes. Like button's range is pretty damn polarized here between something like a king or better and then something pretty bad. There are some mergy hands like jacks with a diamond, 10s with a diamond, 8s with a diamond that this sizing is going to render indifferent. That smaller bet wouldn't, or at least it's going to get closer to rendering indifferent. So not a terrible sizing by any means. And then the all-in here is basically going to be mostly cards with one big diamond. There's plenty of like ace, jack, ace, queen with a diamond here that's going to constitute the all-ins, but there's probably some other stuff in there as well. If there's something we want to unblock on this node, it might even be something like a jack. So there could be some weird bluffs here that are like 6-7 at a really low frequency if that did 3-bet, or ace-6 or something like that. Although I'm not sure those hands can actually bet turn to start with. So yeah, not totally clear to me what bluff should be in here other than the big cards with a diamond. I think like 2 big cards without a diamond, like something like queen jack of clubs. Sorry, that's a straight, but something like ace queen of clubs is likely giving up here at quite a high frequency. The 10 river is reasonable for small blind though with queen jack suited getting there. It's going to remove some of the bluff candidates as well because things like jack 10 are no longer air. So it's a bit trickier to meet the bluff quota on these straight completing rivers and 3-bet pots than it is on blank ones. Just food for thought. So it's not going to be a comprehensive commentary, guys. The reason I do this in real time is that if I paused the video all the time and if I pre-recorded this like someone suggested before, I really feel like I would just ramble on indefinitely. So blind versus blind, single raise pot for a change. Nice, we like to see it. Small c-bet, I think this is a really reasonable way to start off. On this turn, Queen Jack does get there. It's in both ranges. It's going to be in big blind's range less. Queen Jack suited is going to 3-bet sometimes pre, or it's going to raise flop at some frequency. So this is a spot you can play over bet, but a lot of people just simplify to big bet because there is some uncapping effect in the vicinity of 2-parent straights in the big blind's range. 5 of Hearts River, classic brick. Going to have to be selective with what you bet. You can have all in here, you can have overbet here, you can have B75 here, and you can have block. This is definitely a spot where all 4 sizes are really reasonable. The sizing that was chosen there is ideal for that, really. You know, we're unblocking the ace, which is the main thing that's just going to call down against B75, and we beat a bunch of 2-pair combos and ace-x combos, so going for B60, B66. B75 is slightly bigger than I would have gone there, but I think it's totally okay. That looks like the right sizing. So having this versatility to your river sizing toolkit, guys, really important thing, just being able to chop and change between different sizes based on your equity. This one goes bet call, Queen of Diamonds turn. Definitely just using B60 or B75 or something on a card like this is going to be a polarization in big blind's range. And I can actually predict what these guys are going to do because they're at a level where they're playing good poker. So if you know poker theory, you can start to not see what they're doing. It's not that you can know what their hand is. So it's not like it's face up. I've heard people say, well, these guys play so well, but it's actually face up because they're playing GTO strategies. And everyone knows what GTO strategies are these days. So they're no longer playing good poker because everyone knows what they're doing. And there's a difference here between everyone knowing that, yes, on the Queen of Diamonds turn, B75 is the main sizing. That doesn't mean they know which part of your range you have. Really good bluff catch there from Dino Supremo. The 4-5 with the flush blocker is a fantastic bluff catcher. It's unblocking bluffs. It's blocking value. This is not about absolute hand strength. You're going to see strong players call down all the time with hands that just have good blocker properties that beat bluffs in order to profitably call a river bet. You don't need to be beating any value combos, although that will make your hand a mandatory call as we enter into this 3-bet pot here. What you really want to be doing is beating bluffs and have the blocker properties that are right in game theory to unblock them and block the value combos while you're at it. If your hand does both of those things, it's probably a pure call against most bet sizes. Okay, half pot in this texture makes some sense. Ace King 9. Whenever there's an Ace King on the board, it's going to create a bit of a bigger nut advantage than normal for the 3-better, and that's because Ace King never really flats the 3-bet in late position, especially in the small blind. So the 2-pair combos are very much restricted, and therefore not only is Ace King doing better, but Ace Queen and stuff like that are doing really well as well, because there's less ways that small blind can make 2-pair. You'd want to check back a turn like this at quite a high frequency, a very high frequency actually, but when you are betting, you're going to be betting 2-pair plus flushes, sets, that kind of thing, and bluffs. Finding the bluffs there is going to require that you dig into your underpair combos, and many of your hands like 6s with a heart are actually going to be probably jamming this river here, I would think. Then you have some other weird bluffs like the Jack 5 of spades and stuff like that. I kind of think 6s with a heart might be a better jam than the Jack 5 of spades, just comparing some of Big Blind's potential bluff hands here. Hopefully we see a showdown here. If Waroom will call down kindly, we'll get to see whether Dino Supremo just has it or whether he's found a bluff and what kind of bluff combo he's actually decided to go with. Come on, call for the audience. You don't know that you're on camera. You don't know that you're a YouTube star in this moment, so make that hero call. Nah. Just couldn't do it. We should tell people that they're being filmed. Maybe then they would man up to the challenge of hero calling that line. Many of these spots, needless to say, guys, are very bad spots to call down in low stakes games. So for those of you playing 25 NL, 50 NL, etc., if you face a triple barrel blind versus blind on that run out from most people, they're going to be under bluffing. Because to overbluff there, you have to go nuts with pocket pairs on the turn and then follow through, or have enough of the 3-bet bluffs pre and you know, double barrel them. So there's just not going to be a whole lot of that. This is an interesting raise size here for the 3-bet from Dino, a bit bigger than what I'd normally see, but undoubtedly okay. I think there's a few interesting strategies with respect to 3-betting. You can go for like close to min, you can go for the normal 3x, and you can also add a little bit to it. I wouldn't go much more than that. Third pot on the flop here, normal on Queen 9-4. This board gets better and better for the 3-betters range as you move earlier on in the table. And that's because if you were against the cutoff or the button here, you've got things like Ace Queen off and King Queen off to contend with in this rake structure. But in early position, they won't be flatting as many of those hands, and they're going to be a bit more concentrated around 8s, 10s, jacks, etc. when they call the flop. So this is definitely a higher frequency board button against under the gun than it would be something like big blind against button. Again, normal sizing here, geometric sizing for this SPR, building around overpair. Things like kings no club are going to be pure bets here. Even kings with a club is probably like 85% bet frequency or something like that in GTO. And there'll be plenty of jam here with ace queen, I think, for under the gun. The thing is about this board, King, Jack, Jack 10 and club draws, they're all useful to deny equity with. Okay, you can also slow play ace queen on the turn. You don't have to jam it, but it's definitely one of those hands that can jam and isn't really too thin, because even though you are dead some of the time when you get it in, you're also just sometimes getting called by weaker hands like nut flush draw, high showdown value, or king queen or something, and you're cleaning up some equity from those Jack 10, King Jack combos. We have a really small pot that must be about to erupt in size. We have check check on King 6 deuce. You do want to play some checkbacks on this flop, basically. I mean, okay, you can simplify to some just always bet third pot on the flop strategy. Some people do advocate playing that way to simplify the game tree and start from there. Ginge poker. But, you know, I'm sure Ginge does that. I think some other people have that approach as well. And I don't hate it, honestly. I don't think it's like terrible if you're running like a CFP or something, or you're trying to get quick results from people. Getting people to play like that at the micro stakes isn't a terrible thing to do, because by and large, population responds really badly to c-betting. It can leave you out on a limb later on, though, for sure. So the 4-5 there, just going for the value bet on the end. Kind of lost track of that hand a little bit towards the end, but I was ranting about the c-bet everything strategy. I think it has its merits at lower stakes, but it can leave you a bit unprepared as you move up and face people that check raise more, especially people who are exploitatively check raising more. You're a bit of a sitting duck for aggression. We talk about that a lot, by the way, in Cash Injection, the quick fix exploit course available on carrotcorner.com for less than 100 UK pounds. Check it out. Okay, very small and weird check raise here. My first thoughts are that this is a weaker player, because if I was building a check raise range on this board, unless he's playing some kind of like unfamiliarity theorem, as I call it in my course, kind of idea where you're trying to lure the opponent into like a weird part of the game tree that they've not seen before. I don't know if that's what's happening, though. I wonder if this is just a weaker player. You guys can let me know in the comments. So going for the check raise small here could be like a bunch of different ace-x combos. It could be, yeah, I think this is a reg actually. This might be a prepared line. It's not how I would build in this spot, but it's probably all right. Kind of saying that we have like king queen or something at 10-7, I just don't think that's in any way okay, even for that sizing. So I'm going to go back to thinking that that's some kind of weaker player. The 10-7 like value raise on flop / bluff river in these positions is really spewy. It looks like a pretty big mistake, and I like the way that in position played that. Looks like free money for them. Okay, another single raise pot here, king 6 deuce. A lot of shit throwing from Dino Supremo today. I'm not quite sure what the dynamic is. I don't know if these two are maybe lovers or something. Like maybe they have some kind of romantic history together. It certainly seems like quite intimate, like the kind of stuff they're doing here with the throwing of things and the flirtations. So I wonder if that's the case. I'm going to go with that. Yeah, we have a bit of trash now. The dumping of the trash all the way through the hand. I'd get so tired of this. Like, people are just children, man. Like, I actually turn off throwables sometimes because I just find them distracting. Maybe I'm just a boring old man. So the delayed c-bet, overbet is definitely a thing that you can do. This is a ballsy call out of position against this. Although if you've just had trash poured over your head, then, you know, maybe that changes the dynamics of things a little bit. I'm not sure. Jack river here. So yeah, this is going to be really good for the aggressor, because things like ace queen and queen 9 are going to be gone mostly from the big blind's range here. So this jack river probably presents a situation where in position wants to bluff most, if not all, of the combos they've got here with. Jam seems like the right sizing for something like queen 9 or ace queen. Snap call down from Dino Supremo to lose there. Yeah, it's a very good river for range. These guys do know, though, that their opponent can find bluffs in these spots. This is high level poker we're watching. This is possibly one of the toughest games in the world. Apart from like super high stakes online that's happening in some places, this is one of the most difficult games that commonly runs. 500 Zoom is no joke. The guys that play in this pool are basically super elite crushers. They're very good for the most part. They also play higher when the games run, and when this pool runs, that's sort of like bread and butter, just printing money for them probably, I would think. Jacks against kings, not much to say. So I'm yet to see these really weak players. This pool does not look amazing right now. It's not the kind of pool that I'm jumping off the edge of my seat to get involved in, because it seems to be mostly regs playing really well. But then again, we are seeing this bias towards just seeing big pots. Third pot here is probably a thing you can do. When there's 4 small cards, the big blind is going to be doing quite well. It can lead really often. Big blind probably has a 6x monopoly here by far. If I was going to overbet this river, I'd go even bigger. I'd probably go like 2x pot or larger here. I think it's just too easy for you to be bluffing so often that button just has to call now and will do really well by calling. I think that's what's going to happen. See, this raise is super weird. Like the min raise there, I'd want to go bigger. I don't know about that hand from either player, to be honest. One, if I was, okay, he was value betting the river, so maybe that sizing makes some sense for a value bet. I think I'd still be inclined to go bigger. And I think like to make your opponent indifferent there, you do actually have to go bigger. Otherwise, you're just going to be over bluffing, right? Like, and obviously so. And then if I was raising the 6, I guess all you really can do is click it back and hope your opponent freaks out. So I probably like that sizing, because your opponent just either has a 6 or nothing with that river bet size. So yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? Just click it back and hope they do something absolutely stupid. It's probably never going to happen, but it's really the only route to try and make some EV there. Okay, looks like another 3-bet pot brewing. Button versus cutoff. Let me know which fly you preferred, by the way. Do you like the fly from this thumbnail? Did you prefer the fly Pete from the last one? I haven't seen the fly Pete from this one yet, of course. 4-bet pot brewing, I should say. Jam Jar is tagged as a reg. I don't really know this player. I think this player's taken a few dubious plays so far. Might be one of the softer spots in the pool, if I had to guess. I could be wrong. You guys get very angry when I call like one of your beloved crushers a fish. You guys jump on and you're like, shut up! You don't even beat the fucking games! You can't even beat 10 and out, Pete! Shut up! That guy's a reg! And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry to have offended you by insulting one of your heroes. This guy probably like sits in his basement all day, clicking buttons with like moths crawling across his face, and you guys are like, he's my hero! Guys, you need to get a life, seriously. Okay, this is interesting. And then the jam on this turn. So you can actually play jam on flush draw low runouts and 4-bet pots. Like a lot of the time you'll just see third pot all the way. But on that runout where it's like low and it's a flush draw, tons of hands in the in position player's range are going to be flush draw or pocket pair plus straight draw. And because of that, denying a bit more equity with the jam line is definitely an okay way to play. Big squeeze. Even bigger 4-bet, basically just announcing that they're going to go all in. I wonder if Raj is a weaker player. Yeah, they're definitely playing with the tempo of a weaker player. Pocket 5s. That's why the game is running, guys. We have found out why 500 Zoom is going, and it's all because of a person called Raj_17. That's why this game is going. And Ionisys also seems like a weaker player. Blue tag, silly 3-bet sizing for the SBR, short stack, Welsh Gaz. Someone I've played with a bunch in the past, not so much recently, as I've not been playing much, but I remember playing with Welsh Gaz even when I was like a higher volume player back in the day. Jamming ace queen off here makes sense. Kings is going to be a 71% favorite. We'd think it's even more than that. It feels like it should be more than that. And that's good news for the longevity of this 500 pool, because the weaker player has doubled up. You love to see it when you're not the reg on the receiving end. This Roger Federer guy, pretty sure that's a good reg that I've played with before, but I don't really remember much about them. Jack Oscar 95 could be a weaker player, don't recognize the name. Cruiser, obviously strong reg. This is a battle of the Titans, I think. 3-bet, and gonna see either a call or a 4-bet here, otherwise this hand would not make the highlight reel. Jack 7-5, in big blind you can play big or small here. Again, I wonder if Cruz is going to go with this like 5th pot, quarter pot range bet. Looks like some checking is going to be mixed in here, which is definitely right on a board like this. When you're the big blind, your range is just that much more polarized and weaker. It has some diabolical hands in it. And when you have like 2/3 set connecting cards, the Jack, the 7, and the 5 here, and a flush draw, this is the board where Button's going to be doing okay. If you do check, you should play a lot of check raise against small bet, because those are the wishes of your ace jack, queens, kings, aces, bluffs. Bet call here could be anything from a jack to a pocket pair to a flush draw to 10-9 or 8-9. So very interesting spot. And now this is an awkward size to play against. A lot of people don't find this sizing. I love that Cruiser's taken this here, because this is a size that gives you headaches. Not only do you have to figure out what to call and what to fold, you have to figure out what to jam, how often to jam, how to play. Total cooler. Unfortunate for Cruiser here. Really easy value bet call off on the turn, but the pocket 7s is going to scoop a really nice one here. Well played hand by both players for sure. Let's do a couple more, then we'll wrap this up. If you like the way we're thinking and talking about the game, guys, don't forget to check out carrotcorner.com. We have a course on there called Cash Injection that's a very quick boost to your win rate. I think I mentioned Cash Injection already, but it's an easy course to watch. It's not as much of a commitment as our Carrot Poker School. I wonder if I should one day create a fly on the wall course. Would you guys buy that? Like, what do you think? Just like constant fly on the wall action. I really enjoy making these, actually. They're really fun. A lot of people would just use a small bet here. I think there's room for the big bet too. This is a board that creates a bunch of straights with 4-6 suited, 9-6 suited. No offsuit combos hitting straights here though, so maybe this is okay. 8s is going to get 3-bet some frequency. So yeah, you know, this is the kind of board where I think the nut advantage is swung enough towards big blind that I just play small bet. And I'd mostly check back, actually. I think people are meant to donk bet boards like this and don't. And because they don't find that donk bet, their range just becomes that much more sort of nutty and uncapped for checking. So you're going to face a check raise a bit more often. These small raises appear to be all the rage at the moment. Not really sure what the deal is with these. I tend to play a bigger sizing in these spots, but I'm sure this is a prepared line from a reg. Really awkward spot for in position here. They just have to find enough defense. They just have to have the mentality of, okay, I know this sucks for me. I know you've got a ton of value raises, but because you're a good player playing 500 zoom, I also have to give you credit for being able to bluff, and I have to find the right calls in my range. If you play this spot at 50 NL and you play it against a weak reg or a fish or something like that, you can just go ahead and make heroic folds on the flop. Okay, against a mergy fish range for a small sizing, don't fold overpairs, but if you do face like a monumentally massive bomb raise on the flop from a fish, I don't even hate you folding queens immediately, depending on the type of fish. So there's a lot of room for exploits there at the lower stakes that there isn't room for here. Turn barrel gets called. Jam is going to be the main river sizing here. This 8 is really eating into the value combinations though. There were more boats than this on the turn. There's now less. Not surprised to see a lot of giving up here from Stan. If Stan loses control and just starts following through with all 10-9 combos and all Jack-9 combos, Stan will be over bluffing in absolutely no time whatsoever. And if you play against a weak aggro reg at like 50 NL, someone that is like very fond of aggressing but doesn't have much finesse to their game, like doesn't really have a slow down button, then you just want to call down in this spot. So it really is chalk and cheese. There's players at low stakes that barely bluff this situation, and then the ones that do are probably just completely out of control. You don't start to meet balance ranges with combinatoric awareness until you move up to stakes more like this. Yeah, they're check calls here. What would the check calls be on the river? This is a really difficult spot to have many check calls. So 7's full is good. What do you check call with there? Like a 5 that you bluff raised flop with, or a straight or something like that? I guess you do need some. There's some misdraws going for that river bluff. That could even be over bluffed in button shoes if button isn't careful there. So yeah, interesting spot. Okay, final hand for the day. C-bet gets called. This is a different Ginge, I believe, to the one we were talking about earlier. Raj is the snap acting weaker player we've deduced. 8 completes a bunch of the semi-bluffs here. This is probably going to be really value heavy. No, just from the way Raj is playing, i.e. like an absolute maniac, I just expected that to be a lot more value heavy, guys. I really did, but interesting. Some people just play GTO against the fish, even if the fish are evidently stationing you 100% of the time. I could be off on that, by the way, that read. Okay, we've seen this hand now. We better finish it off. My editor's like, just shut up, Pete. You said you were ending the video. Why do I have to do one more hand? That's life. Small bet, called. Checking the turn, I would play, probably just big bet here. I think I'm just building around like king, queen plus or something, doing a lot of checking back. This is not the kind of turn where I want to do a lot of like thin value, small betting for protection. There are turns like that on low boards, but this isn't one of them. Third part in the river makes a ton of sense. You're going to have Jack X doing this, that sort of thing. The Ace X bluff, the worse your blockers are, the more they go for that kind of sizing. Generally, the low sizing, if they can bluff at all. I suspect that hand might be a give up, and that bluff might be an exploit. Oof, that was hard work. If you like this format, guys, do let me know and I'll repeat it. If you want to request which stakes you'd like to see this at, also let me know. Check out carrotcorner.com for everything else if you want to continue watching our content between YouTube videos and for more advanced stuff and more professional stuff. I'll see you there, and I'll see you back here on YouTube for the next bit of free content. Bye for now.